Peace be with you, dear sisters and brothers. My name's Andre Acha, and welcome to The Bright Side here on Catholic SG Radio. Now, on The Bright Side, we invite our sisters and brothers to come in and to share their faith journeys with us. And from their lived experiences, we hope to gain different perspectives and inspiration as well, even as we look to deepen our relationship with Jesus Christ. Now, on every third Sunday of June, and I forget it often, actually, because we actually celebrate Father's Day. It's the day we celebrate our everyday heroes, our dads, especially the Christian dads, right? We're called to reflect God's fatherhood, and of course, by our love, our care, and guidance that we give to our kids and families. Whether you're a dad, or you have a dad, or you simply want to honor the father figures that have shaped your lives, well, we've got a story about a wonderful dad and his faith story, in fact, behind the mosaic work that depicts the rays of the light behind the central crucifix here in the Cathedral of the Good Shepherd. Now, you must be wondering, what? Yeah, I'm sure you're familiar with the cross and that ray of light really that's emanating from the cross behind there. So today in the studio, actually, we're really blessed to have with us Angela Lecomber. Now, she is no stranger to Singapore, right? She was actually a national swimmer. That's right. She used to live here. Now she calls Australia home, Melbourne, actually. So welcome back to Singapore, Angela.
Thank you, Andre.
Yeah, and for you to come in and to agree to share this story with us, we're really, truly very blessed and very grateful. But so let's start off. Share with us a little bit about what you remember about your dad. What was he like?
He was outgoing, but hugely humble and simple man. And he always took pleasure in natural beauty. Yes, he was in the building construction industry. Yes, he had this sort of job on the persona on the outside. But the inside, he had very little material goods, was never interested in material things. When we went on holiday, he would take us to places with no electricity or running water, to Borneo, to India, to Indonesia, places now that have all these things. Back and beyond places. He took orphans to the beach every 2 weeks as part of he was a member of the Rotary Club, but he did it separately. My mother used to make the kwetiao, buy the kwetiaos.
Oh, lovely.
And bring the orphans and the disabled, and we used to carry them into the water.
Can you remember which beach?
It was off the coast. We had to take a boat across.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay.
and he used to do this, and he had the heart for disabled. And if you saw my father, he did big holes in his arms and in his legs. And I used to think as a child, all men had big holes in their arms and legs. But he had an interesting story. And because of that life, where from the age of 8, he was not educated at all. And I know in Singapore, when education is the pinnacle of everything, how did a man with no education past the age of 8 suddenly find himself, in Singapore, running a business, and a successful one at that, and ended up, doing the mosaic at the back of the cathedral.
Right.
He was never acquisitive, never into status or position. And so when the British in those days were part of the British colonial service or part of the army, he was neither any of those.
Right.
And he was actually on his own a businessman. And of course, the local people at the time was suspicious of him a little bit, but they warmed to him because he was such a good-hearted affable person.
Yeah.
But where did he come from? Do you want to know just a little bit? So he was born in North Wales, in Llandudno, in 1919. By the time he was 8, he had this disease that paralyzed. He had to be bedridden. This is before antibiotics was invented, before painkillers. So taken out of school, and he had to self-educate. He had to we didn't have smartphones to keep children occupied. He just read and read
must have
and
been
read.
tough.
It was very tough. And then, he had a dry sense of humor, very people-oriented. And by the time 1938 came, he was 15, 16, he wanted to be a pilot. He couldn't. There was a little bit of a miracle story that I want to share with you about him.
Sure.
But for now, before I take over this question, he ended up, by the time he was 24, in charge of 2,000 men repairing the Lancaster bombers that were used successfully in World War II. So he couldn't be a pilot because he didn't have the paperwork. He didn't go to school.
Right.
But second best was to fit and to
repair those bombers.
Exactly.
Which were in great need by the Allied forces, actually.
Correct. And he was in charge of 2,000 men. And as a result, when he finished the war, the British government gave him an honorary certification in aeronautical engineering, even though he didn't finish primary school.
Wow. That in itself is a miracle. Yeah.
It was a huge miracle. Yeah, that in itself, but his recovery was also a miracle. So I think he had this huge love for Christ because of that. He wasn't Catholic until that miracle happened when he recovered from his osteomyelitis.
Ah, okay. In those days, there was no cure.
Correct. And when he was cured, his mother and him converted to being Catholic. And he always sensed Christ every day.
How did he find his way to the Far East?
Okay, so after the war, Britain was such a deplorable state that he thought he would make a better life. So he found work in some diamond mines in Tanzania.
Wow.
As an engineer. Of course, not aeronautical, of course.
Yeah.
And then he found work in Johannesburg.
But still heavy machinery.
Heavy machinery, correct. Yeah. And then he found his moved to South Africa. And then he joined a company called Landsborough Finlay in South Africa, who supply heavy construction equipment and established the Rhodesian operation, like those days Zimbabwe, the old Zimbabwe.
Yes.
And then contracts in the field led him to secure a position with Sino British Limited in Singapore on as their engineering manager in 1952.
Wow.
And as Sino British were engaged in specialist contracting, which is tiling, he decided to diversify from engineering to tiling. And then he joined another company called Schuon, Tomes and Company in 1954. Then he set up his own business as a specialist contracting company. By then, he already met my mother in 1952, married her in 54. And in the late 1950s, when I was born and I was subsequently baptized in the Cathedral of the Good Shepherd, he was approached by the late Dr. Joseph E. Peng Liang on behalf of Archbishop Michael Also Komondi to provide the tiling behind the cross that we see today in the cathedral. And
it's I was also baptized in the cathedral. And when I made my first communion, we used to have to come for some classes just to prepare us, right? And what caught me was these rays that were on, just behind, right, the cross, as you said. And it's fascinated me for years. I always wondered, how on earth did they do those rays? And now you tell me that your dad was the one who did it.
He was the one. When he did it, I was 2 years old, okay? So right. I honestly don't know what the background was in 1962. However, he loved Italian glass mosaic. Even our bathroom was leftover Italian glass mosaic. Any scraps he could find was Italian glass mosaic. Right. And so he was really attracted to that kind of mosaic. And his personal journey of being cured from osteomyelitis in 1933. And for those of us who know, in 1933, Jesus appeared as the Divine Mercy to Sister Faustina in 1933. Yes. Now, I find that quite remarkable that he was also cured in the same year, although my father knew nothing about the Divine Mercy.
Right.
And certainly when he did the rays, he didn't know anything about the Divine Mercy.
Right.
However, I feel that he felt the rays of Christ because he lived in a way that was of gratitude every day. Always.
Some of the literature that you gave which I read, I was really, really very fascinated at the way that how he must have been in pain very often.
Every day the surgeon would come, and even today, if a child gets osteomyelitis, which is a bacterial, now you can be treated by antibiotics.
Yes.
Even today it is scraped. And those days it was scraped without painkillers or antibiotics, and usually they die.
Yeah.
And he survived it. And that's why he had these big gouging indentations in his arm. Usually you see war veterans with them.
Yes.
Both arms and his left leg. he had these big gouging, and I used to take it for granted. I'd put my hand inside and take it for granted. And he never really communicated that until I was much older as to what happened.
And I mean, that's when you could understand what he was suffering from.
Yeah. And even though he had no more pain physically, psychologically, he would have gone through that time from the age of 8 to the age of 14 alone. And by the window, the bed was pushed against the window of the nuns nursed him because his mother couldn't nurse him. They had to put him in a convent. And the people walking past on the street in this town called Clendidno, where he was nursed, Loreto Convent, he would wave at everybody. And so hence, when people knew him in Singapore, he was very outgoing. He'd say hello to everybody. Everybody knew him from the hawker center to the...
He'd give them a royal wave.
They all knew him because he was such a outgoing personality, but inside was such a simple and pure heart.
Yeah, that was probably, why and how people responded to him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, wow, that is really an amazing story. And, so just share with us, after your dad did that, did he ever share with you, what he thought about the work that he had done? And, I mean, knowing that this was going to be left for...
forever.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, but my father loved mosaic, and recently my husband and I went to Ravenna in Italy, which has the Byzantine mosaics. And those Byzantine mosaics were done in the 4th century. This is now 1,500 years later. The mosaics are still present, whereas artwork fades, mosaic still stays.
Absolutely.
So I feel that he's left... it survived the past renovation. Hopefully, it'll pass a future renovation.
Well, we've done really very major renovations just under 10 years ago.
And it stayed.
And it stayed.
Yeah.
But it's that gold gild and that shine, sort of, that always stays.
It stays. And mosaics have this quality that if you look at the Ravenna mosaics, they last over 1,500 years. I'm hoping that these mosaics, as long as the cathedral is there for another 1,000 years, those rays might still be there. And I think it tells us that, each one of us is God's work of art, each one of us. And that leaves its impression on others.
What's your best memory of your dad?
His simplicity, just his simplicity. In just the simple things, I cannot tell you whereas, I'm sure all listeners will have experienced their parents when you come home from school and they say, how did you do in your test? And if I'm 4th place, my mother will say, why didn't you get 1st place? And, if you know how it is.
I do.
I mean, I went to CHIJ, Convent of the Holy Infant Jesus.
Yes,
and
right here.
You're right here next door. And, it's always about our marks and did you get this place or that place? My father was the total opposite. If I sewed a button on his shirt, even my mother would say, don't worry, the maid or the servant or the helper can do it for you.
Yeah.
If I sewed it, he said, you're so clever, you can do so. He was appreciative of the smallest efforts done by everybody. And so much so that when he ran his business, because he was not educated, he employed people with no education as well. So the storeman came from India who also couldn't read and write, but actually you could walk into a store and could tell you how many cubic meters of tiles.
Sure.
And there was another one also didn't. So he actually respected people of that generation who didn't get the opportunities that we get.
Yeah.
And so whereas when his company was taken over by another company, it was like, what are their qualifications? They don't have those qualifications out. He had a huge simplicity and respect for people's gifts,
And how did he take to your swimming?
He had to get up every morning, 4:45 in the morning,
man.
knock on the door at 5 a.m. for me, take me with my breakfast, which my mother would prepare the night before, which was probably last night's dinner because I was too tired to eat it, and take it in the car with my school uniform. He'd carry my uniform in one hand and I was just like a princess, All I had to do was wake up in the morning, put my swimming gear on, jump into the car. Everything was laid on. My father did it.
Right.
Drove me to the pool. Then when I swam, he walked on the beach. In those days, Singapore Swimming Club didn't have the built-up area in front.
correct.
It was the beach.
Yes.
So he would walk on the beach.
They used to call that the paga area that was cordoned off, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So he would walk, and that was his exercise. And after I'd swum 2Ks, he did his walk. He'd pick me up. Then I'd eat my breakfast in the car, and he'd drive me, drop me in school.
Wow.
So every morning. So that was our time together.
Ah.
Yeah.
That must have been a special time.
It was very special because we're so used to our tiger mothers who make us, study hard, study hard, study hard. Whereas my father was always like, anything I do, what effort I make was so appreciated. And sometimes it's very nice.
And you brought home medals.
I brought home medals.
You brought home medals for the country as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I did, well, in my previous life, I was also a sports reporter. So I read up on what you did as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, for him, I'm sure it must have meant, my goodness, for his little girl to bring back and be a national champion.
Thank you.
Oh.
Yeah.
So on this Father's Day,
Yeah.
what would your prayer be for your dad? It's not in the script.
Yeah. My prayer for my dad, and I think for all of us I understand that for some people, they don't get the experience of a father figure that they would have liked to have had. And for those that haven't, if you're listening, I'm so sorry that you have that. But remember that, all people are flawed.
Yeah.
But just to share, my father, he pointed others to Christ. I think if it wasn't for his example, the way he treated my mother, so respectfully, it's like he is the gold standard. I consider any man, that the way my father treated my mother, the way he treated everyone, the way he dealt honestly with all his business dealings, how he just went out of the way, the extra step, his humility, his simplicity that you heard about, his love of Christ. I mean, he was a white Englishman in Singapore. He became a Singapore citizen, right? And I told this to my husband in 1958, and he said it's not possible 1958, but here is his registration as a Singapore
I saw the chops.
citizen, right? And it was difficult for him because he wasn't part of the colonial group.
Right.
Because he didn't go to the best British schools. He wasn't part of the British Army.
Right.
Neither did he go to school in Singapore.
Yeah.
So he somehow had to use his personality
Yes.
to embrace and to get to be on board. He loved Singapore. And I think he would have been quite... I forget your question now.
Well, I did ask, what would your prayer be for him, and maybe for all dads this Father's Day?
Yes. I think for all dads to realize that their example, there's a book called Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters. And I think that, just to be true to yourself. It's not the masculinity, the toxic masculinity that you think it should be, but it's the gentleness, the humility, the courage in the face of, and being truthful in a world that is not sometimes. Being true to yourself as well. So, and the gentleness, yes. I think it is gentle. I think St. Francis, there was not Francis Assisi, the other St. Francis.
Xavier?
Not Francis,
De
another one.
Sales?
De Sales talked about the gentleness of being a man. And I can't get the quote right now.
Strong but gentle
Strong
man.
but gentle man.
Yeah.
So my prayer is that to all fathers that believe in your own qualities, what you offer to your family, trust in who you are, and that love and simplicity your children will always remember, your kindness, your goodness, and your encouragement of your children. So important.
Thank you so much. We didn't need a man to say that, but we needed a lady to say that because of the affirmation. And I think very often, men are, at the end of the day, we're human, as Jeff, your husband, will I'm sure agree. But, it's very difficult sometimes for some men to show their feelings and to show their emotions, and they think that the strong side always needs to come through. But then it's what's behind that man that keeps him going and being faithful to the family, providing for the family in difficult times, as your dad did, and to be that influence, as you said, and what they offer actually is so much more than they actually realize that they can really do. So, Angela, thank you. It's been a real pleasure, and it's been a real, really for us to have you here has been such a blessing, and for you to share, how your dad's faith. I mean, first of all, he was a walking miracle, to be honest.
Yes, he was.
Yeah, and I'm sure you must have picked up a lot from him, your special times with him. I think I'm sure you miss him.
Yes, I do. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but again, thank you so much for coming. So we'd just like to thank Angela Lecomber, and so the sisters and brothers, really, this is a special for this year's Father's Day. We want to ask you to also pray for all the fathers, particularly those who in providing for their families have also lost their jobs because of the economic situation that we are in. So pray for them and keep them and support them as much as you can. But give Dad a bit of a break this coming Father's Day. So take care, all of you. God bless and love you all. Once again, Angela, thank you so much for being with us. Just a gentle reminder, of course, this Bright Side is, of course, going to be on our YouTube channel, as well as you can catch it on alternate Tuesdays, alternate Thursdays at 7 p.m. So keep it right here, of course, on Catholic SG Radio. I'm Andre Achat. Take care and God bless, love you all. Bye-bye.